They're attacking Earth. The Galaxy Council watched in horror. The debate had been going on for 2 hours, and nobody was really listening anymore. Inside the grand chamber of the Galaxy Council, on the neutral station Orvith 9, 17 species sat in their curved rows of seats and pretended to care about shipping lane adjustments along the outer belt. The lighting was the same as it always was, soft and even, because no one could agree on what a real sky looked like. The air was filtered and tasteless. The seats were arranged in a half-circle around a raised speaker platform, and right now Ambassador Dara of the Suleni people was standing on that platform talking about tariff brackets. She was not a boring speaker. The topic was just boring. In the back row, near the archive terminal, an old Suleni named Oren had stopped pretending to take notes. He was watching the room instead. That was something he had done for 40 years. Watching was his actual job, even if his title said archivist. He noticed things. He noticed, for example, that the young Mavari aide named Save had fallen asleep with his eyes open, which was a Mavari trick that impressed everyone the first time and nobody after that. He noticed Delegate Pell, the older Mavari, drawing something on his data pad that was definitely not related to shipping lanes. He noticed Speaker Hale, tall and silver-skinned at the head of the chamber, doing the particular jaw movement that meant she was biting back a yawn. Then every screen in the chamber went red. It happened all at once. Every display, every personal terminal, every background monitor that nobody usually looked at. All of them switched to a single pulsing beacon, deep red, with a location tag underneath it that most delegates had to look at twice because they did not recognize it immediately. Sol System, third planet, Earth. Dara stopped mid-sentence. The chamber filled with noise the way a room fills with smoke, fast and from every direction at once. Delegates stood. Voices overlapped. Someone near the front called out in Torathi, which was a language that always sounded alarmed even when it was not, and this time it actually was. Speaker Hale brought her hand down on the control surface, and the sound cut. Not the voices, those kept going, but the ambient hum of the station dropped, and in the sudden flatness of that silence people became aware of how loud they were being and stopped. One voice, Hale said, "Oren, what is this beacon?" Oren was already reading. His old eyes moved across the data faster than anyone expected from someone his age. "Emergency distress classification," he said. "Automated, triggered by weapons fire detected in the Sol system." He paused. "The origin of the weapons fire is a Vreth Dominion fleet. 60 vessels by the sensor tag. They have engaged Earth's orbital infrastructure." The noise started again. Hale let it go for 3 seconds and then cut it again. "Earth is a Class 3 protected world," Delegate Siva said from her seat. Siva was Torathi, older, with dark compound eyes that reflected the red light of the screens in a way that made her look angrier than she probably was. "The non-interference accord covers them explicitly. The Vreth have no legal standing to be within that system at all." "Legal standing," said a delegate from the Farron block, a heavy-set male named Das, "is a thing we discuss after we understand what we are looking at. 60 vessels against an unshielded developing world is not an engagement. It is a demonstration. This will be over before we finish talking about it." Several delegates nodded. Several others did not. Oren said nothing. He was pulling up a secondary file on his personal terminal, the kind of quiet action that in a louder moment nobody would have noticed. But Hale noticed. She noticed most things. "Oren," she said, "you have something." "I have a concern," he said. He looked up from his screen and across the room, and something in his face made the remaining side conversation stop without Hale having to do anything. "Before this chamber votes on any response, or decides that no response is necessary, I would like to show everyone something." Das made a short sound that was not quite a laugh. "The archivist wants to give a presentation." "The archivist," Oren said, in the same flat tone he used for everything, has spent 30 years studying the observation files on every Class 3 world in Council space, including Earth. He looked at DOS specifically, which was rare enough that it landed. I am asking for 10 minutes and the main screen. What the Vreth Dominion just flew into is not what anyone in this room thinks it is. The chamber was quiet. Hale looked at him for a moment. Then she opened the main screen. Das leaned back in his seat with the expression of someone who expected to be bored. Save the young Mavari aide had woken up. He was watching Oren with his full attention now, which was also a Mavari thing. When they decided something was worth watching, they did not look away. Oren linked his terminal to the main display. The red beacon faded to the background. In its place came the first image from the Earth Archive, a drone recording 200 years old, showing a landscape of ice and rock, and a small group of humans moving through it in a way that should not have been possible given the temperature readings listed in the corner of the frame. The chamber looked at it. This, Oren said, is where we begin. In the back of his mind, in the part that was always doing the quiet math, he was already thinking about the Vreth fleet. 60 ships, a decorated general, an enemy that had never lost a direct engagement. He did not feel sorry for Earth. He felt sorry for the Vreth. The first image stayed on the screen for a long time. It was not a dramatic image. No weapons, no warships, just white ground and gray sky and a group of small figures moving through conditions that the environmental data in the corner of the frame listed as lethal for 4 of the 17 species currently sitting in the chamber. Oren let them read the numbers. Then he moved to the next clip. This one was from a different continent, a different century, shot by a different observer drone. It showed a city on fire, not a small fire, the kind that moves between buildings like it is alive, the kind that a standard evacuation protocol would call for every species to flee from at maximum speed. The humans were running toward it. Not all of them. Most were moving away, which was reasonable, but a significant number, dressed in heavy protective gear that was clearly not sufficient for the temperatures involved, were running directly into the burning structures. The drone had tracked 6 of them going in. It had tracked 5 coming out, carrying others who could not carry themselves. Delegate Siva made a quiet sound, not words, just a sound. Observer note from the drone, Oren said, reading from his screen without looking up. Quote, subjects entered a structure with an internal temperature exceeding survivable parameters for the purpose of extracting individuals who were not related to them, and in some cases were not known to them. End quote. He paused. The note was flagged as anomalous behavior. The analyst who wrote it had apparently never seen it before. By the time this file was compiled, we had recorded it 412 times across different regions and different centuries. Pell, the older Mavari, had stopped drawing on his data pad. He was sitting very still. Oren moved through the archive the way he moved through everything, steadily, without rushing, without dramatizing. He showed the chamber a medical report on human injury recovery. The numbers were not the kind of numbers you forgot. Bone fractures that would leave a Suleni permanently impaired, healed and functional within weeks. Organ damage that would be fatal in a Torathi, survived with what the human medical files called a difficult recovery. Not impossible, difficult. He showed them a behavioral study. Humans under conditions of sustained high stress did not shut down. Their decision-making narrowed and sharpened. Their physical output increased. The study noted this was counterintuitive and had initially been assumed to be a measurement error. It was not a measurement error. I want to read something specific, Oren said. He found the file and opened it. This is an observer drone note from 83 years ago. A single human male researcher became separated from his team in a high-altitude mountain range. Temperatures below survivable threshold for most council species. No shelter, minimal supplies. He had a broken bone in his lower leg confirmed by the drone's medical sensor. He looked up. He survived 31 days. He walked out. The chamber was silent. For comparison, Oren said, a Suleni in identical conditions would be expected to survive 4 days. A Mavari, perhaps 6. A Torathi would not survive the first night at that altitude. Save, the young aide, had his data pad out and was doing the math. His expression when he finished doing it was the expression of someone who wished they had not done the math. Siva spoke. Her voice was slow and deliberate the way Torathi voices always were. There is a human phrase, she said. I read it in a cultural exchange file some years ago. I thought it was artistic language, poetic. She paused. Whatever does not kill me makes me stronger. Nobody responded to that immediately. Das, who had been quiet since the archive started, shifted in his seat. He was not making dismissive sounds anymore. He was watching the screen with the particular focused look of someone who was revising an opinion they had been confident in 20 minutes ago. How long have we been watching them? He said. It was not really a question. 214 years, Oren said. And in that time, we decided not to make contact because they seemed volatile, Oren said. Historically warlike, unpredictable. The committee that reviewed the file every 30 years kept recommending another observation cycle. The irony of this sat in the room like a physical object. Speaker Hale, who had been quiet for a long time, said, Oren, what does the Vreth Dominion know about any of this? Nothing, Oren said. The Vreth did not request our files. They do not have observer data. What they had was a scan of the Sol system showing no energy shielding on the outer planets, no warships beyond the system boundary, and no registered Council allies. He closed the archive window. They saw a small world with no visible protection and they made an assumption. He did not say the assumption out loud. He did not need to. On the main screen, where the archive had been, the live feed from the Sol system had come online while he was speaking. The feed was sharp and real-time, relayed by a Council monitoring satellite at the system edge. 60 Vreth vessels hung in formation near the 4th planet. And something else was happening, something that made several delegates lean forward in their seats. Oren looked at the screen and said nothing. He already knew what came next. Vorik had done this before. The demand phase was always the same. You arrived in force. You broadcast the surrender terms. You gave them enough time to see the size of what they were dealing with. Then they either surrendered or you fired a warning shot and they surrendered after that. 4 systems in 12 years, and not one of them had made him fire a second shot. He had 60 vessels. Earth had no registered fleet, no energy shielding on the outer system, and no Council allies. The scan data was clean. He had checked it 3 times before departure because he was a thorough general, not because he was worried. He was not worried. The surrender demand went out in 12 languages, including the 2 most common human ones, at standard broadcast strength. Then Vorak waited. 11 minutes passed. His communications officer looked up. No response, Commander. Send it again. Another 4 minutes. Then a response came in, not from a government office, not from a diplomatic channel, from a human orbital station in the middle ring military classification, a voice that was male and flat and entirely too calm for the situation. The translation came through with a slight delay. This is Commander Wren, Orbital Defense Station 7. We have received your transmission. Please identify your command authority and reporting structure so that Earth can direct compensation claims to the correct administrative body following the engagement. Vorak stared at the speaker. That, said his first officer, a female named Ash, is either a very brave translation or a very bad one. Vorak decided it was a translation problem. He ordered a warning shot, a satellite array near the outer ring. Nothing critical, just a visible demonstration. The kind of shot that said we are serious and you should be afraid. The array went dark. And then nothing happened for 19 seconds, which was exactly long enough for Vorak to think that the demonstration had worked. Then the sensors started screaming. Not because of an energy weapon, not because of anything his detection systems were designed to find. The incoming signatures were kinetic, physical mass, accelerated. No energy signature because there was no energy weapon involved, just material launched from somewhere on the surface of 3 of Earth's moons at speeds that his tactical officer was still trying to calculate when the first ship on the far edge of the formation went completely dark. Not damaged, dark. One moment it was there, the next its entire power signature was gone. Formation shift, Vorak said, and to his credit he said it fast. Spread to defensive pattern 4. His fleet began to move. In the council chamber, Oren watched the feed. Around him, delegates had stopped pretending to do anything else. Even Das was leaning forward with both arms on the barrier rail in front of him. On the screen, the Vreth fleet shifted formation. And the human defensive response shifted before the Vreth formation was halfway complete. Pell said very quietly, they anticipated it. Watch the moon positions, Save said. He was the youngest person in the room, but he had been tracking the tactical geometry for the last few minutes. The launch platforms are repositioning. They mapped the likely defensive formations before the Vreth arrived. They already calculated where the fleet would move. Das sat back. The sound he made was not words. On the feed, Commander Wren's station had not fired anything directly. It was coordinating. The orbital station was the brain and the moon platforms were the hands, and the hands were very good at their job. A second Vreth vessel lost power. A third took a hit that did not kill it but knocked it sideways out of formation in a way that created a gap, and the gap was immediately used. Vorak's voice came through on the Vreth fleet channel, which the Council satellite was also picking up. He was issuing orders fast and clean, the voice of an experienced commander who was scared but not panicking. Vorak was good at his job. The problem was that his job had just changed into something he had not trained for. He tried a third formation, a pincer approach, one wing curving wide around the planetary plane while the other held position. The moon platforms were already adjusting when the formation started moving. Hale spoke without taking her eyes off the screen. Oren, your file said they learn faster than any species we have observed. Yes, Oren said. How fast? Oren thought about the correct way to answer that. Then he said, the Vreth have used 3 different tactical approaches in the last 14 minutes. Each one has been countered faster than the previous one, not at the same speed. Faster. Hale was quiet for a moment. They are getting better while the battle is happening. Yes, Oren said. On the screen, a 4th Vreth ship went dark. Wren's voice came through the open channel again, still flat, still calm, addressing the Vreth fleet directly. Commander Vorak, your current approach vector places your 3rd and 7th columns in overlapping fire solutions in approximately 4 minutes. I am informing you of this because it will result in significant casualties that neither side requires. You are welcome to adjust. The chamber absorbed this. Siva said slowly, he is warning them. Yes, Oren said. In the middle of the engagement, he is warning the people shooting at his home. Yes, Oren said again. Nobody said anything after that for a while. They watched the screen. The Vreth 3rd and 7th columns did not adjust in time. The casualties were significant. The feed kept running and the chamber kept watching, and at some point the watching stopped feeling like observation and started feeling like something else. Pell was the one who finally said it. He had been quiet for a long time, doing something on his data pad that was not drawing this time, actual numbers. He looked at them for a while before he spoke. I want to understand something, he said. The moon platforms, they are not energy weapons. They are not technology that requires a significant industrial base to produce. They are mass drivers, Electromagnetic acceleration of physical material. Correct, Oren said. Which means they have no heat signature before launch, no charging cycle, no targeting beam. The only way to detect an incoming round is to already know where the platform is, and the platforms are underground. Correct. Pell set down his data pad. Why did we not know they had these? Because we were not looking for them, Oren said. Our survey scans looked for energy weapons, shielding systems, and registered military spacecraft. Those are the things that Council threat assessment protocols flag. The humans built something that our protocols were not designed to find. The room sat with that for a moment. Das, who had fully abandoned his earlier position and did not seem embarrassed about it, said, "Did they build it specifically to defeat our detection methods?" "We do not know," Oren said. "It is possible they built it because it was effective and cheap. Humans have a long history of very effective cheap solutions." He pulled up a secondary file without being asked. Their entire military history shows a recurring pattern. They face a threat they cannot match directly. They find a way around it, usually something that no one expected because it seems too simple. He put an image on the secondary screen beside the live feed. It was an old photograph, black and white, from Earth's 20th century. A metal tube, roughly welded, sitting in a ditch beside two human soldiers. Anti-armor weapon, Oren said, made from materials available in most civilian workshops at the time, effective against armored vehicles that cost several thousand times more to produce. They called it an ambush equalizer in the tactical notes. He closed the image. They have been thinking this way for a very long time. On the main feed, Vorik had gone to his fifth formation attempt. The chamber watched the moon platforms respond. The response time was shorter than the last one, which was shorter than the one before that. Save had been doing his own tracking. He spoke without looking up from his data pad. At this rate of adaptation, by the time the Vreth reach a 10th formation attempt, the response time will be near instantaneous. If there is a 10th attempt, Pell said. The feed showed two more Vreth ships losing power simultaneously. That brought the total to 9 disabled or destroyed out of 60. Not a catastrophic number yet, but the shape of the engagement was clear to anyone who was watching the rate rather than the total. Oren stood up from his seat, not dramatically. He just needed the main screen's full attention for what he wanted to show next. "I want to talk about the planet itself," he said. "Not the people, the planet." He pulled up the environmental file for Earth, standard survey data, the kind collected on every observation target. He put 3 numbers on the screen. Gravity, atmosphere composition, average surface pathogen density. Earth's gravity is higher than Council standard, he said. Every human who has ever lived has spent their entire life carrying more weight than the baseline any Council species considers normal. Their skeletal and muscular structure reflects this. They are denser than they look. He moved to the next number. Their atmosphere contains a reactive gas called oxygen at concentrations that most Council medical guidelines classify as a mild chronic irritant for long-term exposure. Humans breathe this every moment of their lives. Their biology adapted to use it as a fuel source. It is why their metabolic output under stress is significantly higher than equivalent body mass would suggest for other species. He moved to the 3rd number. Pathogens, he said. Earth has more varieties of bacteria, virus, and parasite capable of infecting a human host than any other Class 3 world in the archive. These organisms have killed a significant percentage of the human population multiple times across recorded history. Entire generations. The humans did not leave. They did not build sealed environments and abandon the surface. They developed immune responses. Then they developed medicine. Then they developed the medicine faster. He paused. There is a version of Earth's history in which the planet's biology was the greatest threat the species ever faced. They beat it. They continued. Siva was very still. Her compound eyes moved to Oren and did not move away. "What you are describing," she said, "is a species that has been in a survival situation for its entire existence." "Yes," Oren said. "And the Vreth Dominion flew 60 ships into that survival situation and fired the first shot." "Yes," Oren said. The room was quiet enough that the ventilation hum was audible. Das said, "The Vreth General, Vorak, is he a good commander?" Oren considered. "By the assessments we have of Vreth military operations, yes, he is experienced, decorated. His record shows adaptability and discipline." "And he is losing." "He was losing before the first shot was fired," Oren said. "He just did not know it yet." On the feed, Vorak tried a sixth formation. Ren's station responded before the formation was complete. Another ship went dark. And then, for the first time since the engagement began, the Vreth fleet stopped moving entirely. They were not surrendering, they were pausing. Oren watched this and thought, he is finally doing the math. It was too late for the math to help, but at least he was doing it. Vorak sent the first ceasefire signal 40 minutes into the engagement. He sent it on the standard military channel, directed at Earth's orbital station. He used the correct formal Vreth phrasing, which acknowledged his fleet as the initiating party and requested a pause in hostilities for the purpose of negotiation. It was the kind of signal that in 12 years of operations he had received from others. He had never sent one himself. Commander Ren did not respond. Vorak waited 8 minutes and sent it again, this time on the open emergency band. Still nothing. His communications officer confirmed the signals were being received. Earth station was not malfunctioning. It was simply not answering. He sent a third signal, this one shorter, a single line asking for confirmation of receipt. No response. On Vorak's bridge, the tactical display showed 17 ships disabled or destroyed. He had 43 vessels still operational, and he was under no illusions about what those numbers would look like in another hour. Every adaptation he tried was being absorbed and countered faster than the previous one. He was an experienced general, and he could read an engagement clearly. And what he read was that he had made a fundamental error before the first shot was fired, and that error was not correctable by anything he had available. He told his first officer, Ash, to open the Council emergency diplomatic channel. Ash looked at him. She did not say anything. She did not need to. In Vreth military culture, requesting council mediation was the kind of thing that ended careers. It was an admission in writing that you could not solve your own problem. Vorak said, "Open it." She opened it. In the council chamber, the incoming signal alert lit up on the secondary screen. Hale read the header and looked at Oren. "The Vreth commander," she said, "is requesting that the council negotiate a ceasefire on his behalf. He states that Earth's command has not responded to 4 direct communications." The chamber processed this. Save said very quietly, "He cannot get them to answer." Oren did not look surprised. "No," he said, "he would not be able to, not at this stage." "Why?" Das said. Oren thought about how to explain it simply. There is a pattern in human historical conflicts. When they decide that a fight is necessary, they finish it. They do not pause in the middle. Ren warned the Vreth before the engagement started, with the compensation claims message. He warned Vorak again during the engagement about the overlapping fire solution. He gave them 2 opportunities to stop before stopping became expensive. He looked at the screen. They did not take either opportunity. From Ren's position, the conversation is over until the engagement concludes. Hale brought the emergency accord motion to the floor without further preamble. The vote was on deploying a council peacekeeping fleet to the Sol system to intervene. The debate that followed was shorter than it should have been and louder than it needed to be. The Farron bloc argued that sending the fleet validated the Vreth's framing of the situation as a council-level conflict rather than a border incident. 2 delegates from the outer systems raised the non-interference question again. which Siva dismantled in 4 sentences, by pointing out that the accord had already been violated by the party they were now being asked not to respond to. Das surprised everyone, including himself, by arguing in favor of the motion. He said he had spent the last hour watching the feed, and he wanted to be clearly on record as someone who had updated his assessment based on available evidence. The debate kept going in circles. Dara stood up. She had not spoken since the archive presentation began. She was not a dramatic person, and she did not speak dramatically now. She waited for the room to notice she was standing, which took a moment, and then she said what she wanted to say in a direct, flat way that owed something to the human communication style she had apparently absorbed from too many years reading Earth cultural files. She said they were not voting to protect Earth. Earth did not need protecting. What Earth needed from them was nothing. What the Vreth needed was someone to tell them the conversation was available because Ren was not going to do it for them. She said the second reason was more important. She said, one day, possibly within their lifetimes, Earth was going to sit in this chamber as a full member species. That was not a question. That was a timeline. And when that day came, every delegate who was currently in this room would be a historical entry in the record Earth's archivists pulled up. She asked them to think carefully about what they wanted that entry to say. She sat down. The vote passed. The Council fleet launched from Orvith 9 within the hour. It was a formal fleet, large and visible, the kind designed to communicate authority across a significant distance. Several delegates watched it go from the chamber viewport. It was a good-looking fleet. Oren went back to his terminal and pulled up Vorak's ceasefire request to draft an acknowledgement. He wrote it carefully, in formal Vreth, explaining that the Council had received the request and that a fleet was en route. He added one line at the end that was not standard diplomatic language. He wrote, "The Council strongly recommends that Commander Vorak make another attempt to reach Earth's command authority. The Council's fleet will take 3 days to arrive. The current engagement trajectory does not favor the Vreth position over 3 days." He sent it and then sat back and looked at the feed. 21 ships now, out of 60. Somewhere on that Vreth bridge, Vorak was doing the same math Oren was doing, and reaching the same answer, and having a significantly worse time of it. The Council fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system 3 days later, and found that the battle was already over. 29 Vreth vessels remained. The other 31 were either destroyed or drifting without power. The 29 that remained had pulled back to the system boundary and were holding position with their weapons offline, which was the closest thing to a white flag the Vreth had in their protocols. Hale received the engagement summary before the fleet had finished decelerating. She read it once, then read it again, then handed her data pad to Oren without saying anything. Oren read it, he handed it back. "The condition," Hale said. "Explain the condition." Ren accepted the withdrawal, Oren said. "On one condition. Every Vreth soldier on every remaining vessel is to be processed by Earth's medical teams, documented, given treatment if needed, then returned home within 7 days." He paused. "No permanent prisoners, no executions, no reprisals." Hale looked at the data pad again. He could have taken prisoners. He could have demanded reparations. He won decisively. "Yes," Oren said. "Why did he not?" Oren thought about the archive footage. The humans running into the burning building. The observer drone note about the 6 who went in and the 5 who came out carrying others. The 412 recorded instances. "Because that is what they do," he said. "Winning is not the end of it for them. What comes after the winning is also their responsibility." Hale was quiet for a long time. The Council delegation that went aboard Earth's orbital station for the first contact meeting was small. Hale, Dara, Pell, and Oren, plus 2 aides. They dressed in formal council attire and were briefed on human greeting customs, including the handshake, which the briefing described as a gesture of mutual trust, with roots in demonstrating that neither party was holding a weapon. Oren thought this was a very human thing to have as a greeting ritual. The station's meeting room was plain, functional. The walls were a uniform gray, and there was a long table and chairs and a window that looked out at the curve of earth below them, blue and white and startlingly bright. No decoration, no symbols of authority, just a room with a table and light. Commander Wren was already seated when they came in. He stood when they entered, which Dara had been told was a sign of respect. He was not a large man. He was average in almost every visible way, with the particular quality of stillness that the psychological profile had described as common in humans who had spent a long time in high-stress environments. Not suppressed, just settled. He shook Hale's hand first, then Dara's, then Pell's, then Oren's. Oren noted that the grip was firm and brief, and entirely unperformative. Then Wren sat back down and looked at them across the table with an expression that was patient and direct and slightly tired. "I appreciate you coming," he said. "I have some questions if the council has time." Hale said they had time. Wren said, "How many species are out there?" Dara said, "Registered council members, 17. Non-member species in contact with the council, approximately 40. Species that we are aware of but have not yet established contact with. The number varies depending on classification, but several hundred at minimum." Wren nodded slowly. "How long have you known we were here?" 214 years, Oren said. Wren looked at him. His expression did not change much, but something behind it shifted. "And you didn't come say hello because?" Dara said carefully, "The assessment at the time was that Earth was not ready for contact." "Because we seemed dangerous," Wren said. "It was not a question." "Because you seemed volatile," Dara said. "The committee that reviewed the file every 30 years kept recommending another observation cycle." Wren looked out the window at the planet below them. He was quiet for a moment. When he looked back, something in his face had settled into a kind of dry recognition that Oren found difficult to interpret precisely, but understood in general terms. "We might have liked knowing we weren't alone," Wren said, "earlier." Nobody had a good answer to that. The formal first contact agreement was signed at the same table, 2 hours later. It was a standard document with several non-standard amendments that Wren had requested, all of them reasonable, some of them surprisingly sophisticated for a species that had not had formal interstellar legal experience. Pell, who reviewed the amendments, said afterward that they had clearly done research and thought carefully about what to ask for. Dara said that was not surprising. That evening, Oren sat at his archive terminal on Orvith 9 and opened Earth's classification file for the first time since before the engagement. He deleted the old designation. He sat for a while thinking about what to write instead. He thought about Vorak doing the math too late. He thought about Wren warning the Vreth about the overlapping fire solution in the middle of a battle. He thought about 31 days in a mountain range on a broken leg. He thought about 412 recorded instances of humans running toward danger for strangers. He wrote the new designation, Class 1 Emergent Species, Elevated Caution Advisory appended. A young aide named Riv, who was working late and had read most of the file by now, leaned over and said, "What is the caution for? They seemed reasonable in the contact meeting." Oren saved the file. "The caution is not for them," he said. "It is for the next species that looks at a small world with no visible allies and decides that means it is undefended." He closed the terminal. "Some lessons are cheaper to read than to learn directly." Riv looked at the closed terminal for a moment. "Do you think the Vreth learned it?" Oren stood up and put on his coat, which meant he was done for the evening. "Vorak learned it," he said. "Whether the Dominion listened to Vorak is a different question." He moved toward the door. "Either way, Earth is in the file now. The caution is visible, Anyone who reads it carefully enough will understand. He left the archive room and the lights dimmed behind him, and the station was quiet and somewhere below them. On a blue and white planet that had been alone for 214 years, the lights were still on. They had always been on. Nobody had just bothered to look.